Hi, this is Mish Monk, and today's podcast is Meghan dominating the public speaking sphere. An effective public speaker, some will attribute the skill as a natural gift, while others, like me, feel there is a rudimentary talent that can be honed for mass communication. However, passion is part of the deal in the making of a speaker, or for that matter, any mastery of a craft or skill. I'm going to begin this podcast with my very strong opinion that Meghan Markle is an effective public speaker. And like I said in the title, she will dominate in the public speaking sphere. I've rewatched her speeches on YouTube, and I recommend that you do the same and look at the arc of Meghan's delivery and her adeptness to adapt her message to her audience, whether at the United Nations or for a high school audience. At the 2015 UN Women's Advocate for Political Participation and Leadership, she introduced the world to her activism for gender equality by way of a dishwashing detergent commercial. Not only did this awareness define her goals and philosophy, it powers the basis of her current philanthropic work. In that speech, she said UN women designated the expiration date for gender inequality as 2030. Versus the data that shows it will take until 2095 to reach that goal. So is it any wonder that Meghan works diligently and consistently to accelerate the achievement of this goal? From the speech at the UN to unscripted remarks highlighted as such by the media that Meghan Markle gave first royal speech without notes. That's an actual YouTube title from one of the sources. Meghan's bar was set so low that there was wonderment that she could deliver a 3-minute talk about the Together cookbook. Another speech, again delivered without notes in hand, was at SmartWorks, exactly 1 year after the Together cookbook reception. And in that speech, she shares that her intention when she arrived in England was to connect with people on the ground and to do important work. Right there, she said what was her plan, and yet the firm acted like they were surprised or blindsided by her work ethic. For some, the idea that Meghan is making her personal opinions public rubs them the wrong way. How dare she be emotional, open her life for understanding and empathy, and not show deferential appreciation for being let in to the firm? She's not supposed to use her public space, and most certainly not use her right to free speech for anything but the benefit of the Queen, which would cover propping up William and Kate. She's also not supposed to be eloquent and in control of her skills because, well, she's from the hood. Remember that racist commentary in the media? And I'm sure it was joked upon in the aristocratic circles. And she's not supposed to use her performative femininity for anything but to be a lady in waiting behind Kate and as a shadow to Harry. In the traditional and historical spaces of Western Christianized civilization, men have dominated the medium of public speaking. In America, we can draw on a large number of men, black and white, who have spoken to the masses of various sizes that span the birth of America to the shaping and the rise of the anti-abolitionist movement through the civil rights movement and into contemporary times. The women, on the other hand, were a spattering, and were usually allowed to speak only on their specific expertise, like midwifing or something like that, rather than a wider spectrum of philosophy or law. And for black women, their voices were rarely heard, celebrated, or invited to the table by the men, and also by the women like Susan B. Anthony. Some of the notable black females are Sojourner Truth for her speech Aren't I a Woman in 1851. She was born into slavery and fought for not only the causes of abolition of slavery, but the equal rights for women. We have Ida Bay Wells, journalist and abolitionist, for her speech Lynching, Our National Crime in 1909. Mary McLeod Bethune, educator who worked in the New Deal era, Fannie Lou Hamer, who helped lead black voting rights in Mississippi, Shirley Chisholm, the first African American woman to be elected to Congress and run for president. So when you don't have a voice or a place to project that voice, others will talk over you. They'll erase you or redefine who you are. That's why we celebrate Meghan's place on the podium, in front of the microphone, in front of a video conference call. Even black speakers I heartily disagree with have earned their right to say their nonsense. Malcolm X stated in a speech about his faith, U.S. politics against the black race, and the female gender, saying, "The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected woman in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman." And I'm lifting that quote from his bigger speech because it still has truth and relevance today. Because when a woman of color takes a public stage, stands confidently, opens her mouth, and exudes intelligence, knowledge, and call to action messaging, the backhanded compliments and loaded criticisms are plenty. Of course, you've heard, "Oh, you're so eloquent, you're so articulate." And the condemnation of when she's publicly wronged is a whimper versus a roar. When she's not invited to talk about the subjects that are important to her and her race or gender, her significance and connection to the big picture is diminished. So I'm going to reiterate, Meghan Markle, an actor, philanthropist, social activist, member of the whitest of the white European monarchies, has earned her place as an effective communicator. And with her Netflix deal, she will elevate and fine-tune how to reach more people than the 67.8 million British people. Let me acknowledge, we do have a lot of motivational mouthpieces who get paid enormous sums of money and can talk in wonderful sound bites fit for quote sharing on social media. In a stadium or television studios, they can get us to stand and cheer and repeat uplifting mantras. But hours, days, months later, nothing remains to resonate in the soul unless you buy their self-help programs and books and audio tapes. Nothing against them. Everyone has a right to legally earn their coins. In March 2020, market data estimates that the motivational speakers market in the U.S. generated an estimated $1.9 billion in revenues in 2019. Market data and analysts project that the value of the professional speaking industry will grow at 4.1% average annual pace, reaching $2.30 billion by 2025. That's money that's coming straight from your pocket to them. I want to separate Meghan from that crowd. She's not an entertainer in the sense of the theatrical entertaining speaker. She rings true with authenticity of her oratory prowess and for her intentional selection of organizations that align with her values and philanthropic goals. What looks effortless on her part comes with hours, days of practice and or training, and I'm emphasizing the element of preparation for those who think they can roll out of bed and be a dynamic speaker, writer, artist, etc. And this level of success is even more so for the person who is committed to putting action to the words. Again, there are a ton of motivational, inspirational speakers because the money is good. But when it comes to action and more than repeating a hard luck childhood story, I'm going to say don't talk the talk unless you can walk the walk. And Meghan doesn't show up to show off. She's never stepped onto a platform to be an empty mouthpiece. Hilary Waterman, an anthropologist and science writer, wrote an essay called On Men's and Women's Public Speech. She references Joshua Gunn's essay called On Speech and Public Release that highlights the field of public address as an important arena where social roles and norms are contested, reshaped, and upheld with an ideological bias against the feminine voice. And he's talking about the actual sound of a woman's voice and the devaluation of femininity when the female speaker is connected to being, we've heard this, a nag, the motherly voice who scolds, the adoring wife who must pepper her speech with talking about her husband. Gunn believes that masculine speech is the cultural standard and is given value and respect. The assertive male signifies reason, control, and authority suitable for the public domain. Women's voices are higher pitched, and their characteristic speech patterns have a distinctive cadence that exhibits a wider range of emotional expression. In Western cultures, he contends that this is bad because it comes across as uncontrolled, which is coded as feminine. So the emotional speaker is considered using feminine style. Men are expected to repress passionate, emotional speech because it threatens the norms of masculine control and order. Now, this was written pre-2020 US election cycle, so it would be interesting to get an updated perspective. But what has all of this got to do with Meghan? Given the immediate backlash that Meghan receives after each speech, every Zoom call, every puff of air that she takes, I think there is more at play here than just being the average troll. And even from respected journalists, they seem to fall into the trap of gender and racial bias. Because to be in the position that Meghan's in and garner any level of interest and support is not a small feat. The Black voice, the woman of color, our voices, don't get the same analysis and objectivity. And in many cases, we don't get the same time and platform as the white counterparts. Gunn goes on to say that in the US, language ideologies are complex and highly prescriptive. From early on, we absorb admonitions like girls shouldn't be so bossy and boys should act like gentlemen. And somewhere along the way, through further coding, we understand what that means. We understand what bossy means. And we understand what the gentleman spectrum means. And when they're violated, it's glaringly obvious because, for instance, in the 2012 elections with Howard Dean, he did an impassioned speech with this crazy celebratory roar at the end. And it was considered not gentlemanly, a little bit unhinged, and too emotional for the highest office. Fast forward to 2020, and today's leaders, such as in the UK and the US, are giving sometimes these unhinged speeches that are both performative and have some kind of addictive appeal to the undiscerning palate. But they still fall within the barometer of masculinity, because now we have the alpha male approach that appeals to some for its perceived strength. See, Howard Dean was emotional, but now we have this toxic, I am strong, hear me roar. It's not about wisdom. Their perceived courage is because they're not backing down, and they're perceived as risk takers because they are giving a free pass. So they risk nothing, but people are in this bubble of that they're strong and powerful. On the flip side, women face a different dilemma: how to please like a woman and impress like a man. In the discursive performance of femininity, Hating Hillary, Carolyn Campbell, a professor of speech communication, explains that women in the public sphere have historically been expected to perform femininity. And we see headlines when talking about Meghan where they focus on that feminine part. Some of the headlines, and these are actual headlines, after Meghan delivered a speech, were Meghan stuns in silky signature blue, and Meghan Markle shows off seriously long hair, and Meghan Markle debuted super long hair. Joshua Gunn writes that women usually accomplish the balancing act by adopting a personal tone, giving anecdotal evidence, using domestic metaphors, and making emotional appeals to ideals of wifely virtue and motherhood, Women have to please like a woman and impress like a man. And that's the lane where the firm and its royal-toting media would like Meghan to stay within and make it hers. Caroline Campbell asserts that contemporary norms about how women should present themselves in the public sphere echo 19th century constraints on female activists who were the precursors of today's female politicians. And when a woman is in the public eye, everything about her is political. And for Meghan, her body, mind, and the outward self are treated as if it belongs to the monarchy. She must fall in line with the norms and traditions, and to a certain extent be willing to be at the mercy of the people of Britain for their amusement, entertainment, and even their vitriol. Campbell continues, in the 19th century, women speakers were expected to reaffirm their womanliness discursively at the same time that they demonstrated the ordinary rhetorical competencies, such as they should be able to give a cogent argument, clarity of position, offering compelling evidence, and responding to competing views. Because those things, that's the part that's masculine. Something that we see female politicians having to do in their balancing act to be taken seriously without compromising their femininity was like Margaret Thatcher, who worked with a speech trainer to tone down her shrillness, and Kamala Harris, who's running for vice president and is a prosecutor by career and a senator, but she had to mute that tough prosecutorial image so that she is not the attack dog, the black angry woman stereotype for the national stage. Global opinions editor for the Washington Post, in a review of the Kamala Harris and Mike Pence presidential debate, said, quote, "We, as women of color, have to be prepared, but not sound clinical. We need to be likable. We must appear experienced yet humble. Black women in particularly need to be a little sassy but not too aggressive, lest we're not seen as feminine. Black women especially have to be seen to be tough, but we aren't allowed to be angry, even if our anger is justified in a country that too often silences us," unquote. Meghan faces criticism that has racist overtones, gender bias, and just plain "we're angry that you've escaped our clutches" vibes. One writer, who I refused to give her name, and she freelances with the Daily Mail, used Les Brown, 75 years old. He's black, former state representative, author, and motivational speaker. Net worth $10 to $12 million. Eric Thomas, 50 years old, black educator with a PhD, pastor, speaker, net worth $5 million. And Tony Robbins, 60 years old, white, motivational speaker and coach, net worth $600 million. And this reporter used those three people as being more accomplished than Meghan, and therefore have the right to be speakers versus Meghan. So she picked a 75-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old. She picked people who are in the job of public service. One has a self-help, empire. That's Tony Robbins and Les Brown. And he's bounced around from different things. But she's using this as the barometer for Meghan, and Meghan's ability to speak, or should she speak. She questioned why Meghan should be paid more or in the same vein as, again, men, such as Richard Branson, 70 years old, Rudy Giuliani, 76 years old, Tony Blair, 67, all white. But she's being measured that Meghan shouldn't even get the money or get paid more than these three people. And if you want to look up Rudy Giuliani's background, I don't even know why she would put him in the same category as anybody. But Again, this is rich coming from a white woman and a journalist. So, again, notice the list of men she idealized as the standard for measuring Meghan's worthiness to speak and earn an income, in addition to the pettiness of diminishing what Meghan, at 39 years old, has accomplished and will continue onward. Now that the speeches are mostly in her home, using Zoom, what Meghan wears, her body language, and if Harry's beside her, then his actions and body language are scrutinized with a biased lens. Her words are parsed, her intention is shaded, with full-strength cynicism and false projections, so that it's not what she said, but what we're telling you she meant. And the perfect example is when she encouraged Americans to vote, and then you have this cabal of craziness that says, she says vote for Biden. Obama, in his biography, talked about the audacity of hope. And Meghan's audacity was and continues to be about speaking up and speaking out beyond the firm, and I think as a survivor of the firm. As a side note, when I saw that video of Meghan talking about the realities of her life in the firm, in the African Journey video, I said to my daughter, she's leaving. I meant that she's leaving with or without Harry, and I'm glad that they did it together, and may their love continue boldly on. But Meghan had a spine before she met Harry. She had a voice, she had her money, she had purpose, she had a BS barometer. And that's how you raise your children, especially your daughters, to have a BS barometer. You push that button, you let the doors open, and you get the hell off the ride. You owe no one, including a family, an employer like the firm, your undying loyalty. Meghan has every right to have that audacity to be self-reliant, ethical, and to love and be loved properly. That's my PSA for you young ladies out there. You know, I've been married for 30 years. I understand loyalty. I understand pure love and authenticity in your relationship. But please, push the button when it's toxic and get the hell off. So that's my PSA. Anyway, so again, I urge you to pull up the speeches and witness the transformation that is ongoing, to see Meghan transform into this mature, powerful icon for inspiration, motivation, and activism. The list of names that she's unfairly been compared to have not walked in her shoes and never will. What Meghan is doing is relevant and necessary as we are facing a global game changer in the form of the pandemic, climate change, civil unrest, and other hardships. Having advocates in social and political spaces like Meghan and Harry who align their messaging with their goals will shore up the activism to be groundbreaking and the accomplishments to continue. So go rewatch those speeches, and this is Mish Monk signing out.